The sound of my heels clicking against the marble floor echoed through the empty hallway of my apartment building. Something felt wrong before I even reached my door. Call it instinct, or maybe just the culmination of months of paranoia. But my hand trembled as I inserted the key. I'm Rose, and until 6 months ago, I thought I understood what betrayal meant. I was wrong. The door swung open to reveal chaos. My pristine living room looked like it had been ransacked by someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Photo albums lay scattered across the floor, their contents spilled like confetti. My desk drawers hung open, papers strewn everywhere. But it wasn't a burglar. They would have taken the Tiffany lamp or the signed first editions. No, this was personal. "What the hell?" I whispered, dropping my briefcase. The sound of running water came from upstairs. My heart pounded as I grabbed the heavy crystal paperweight from my desk, a wedding gift, ironically, and crept toward the stairs. "Oh, Rose, you're home early." Evelyn's voice drifted down from my master bedroom. My mother-in-law. Of course. "What are you doing here?" I managed to keep my voice steady, though my grip tightened on the paperweight. She appeared at the top of the stairs, perfectly coiffed as always, wearing that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Mark asked me to collect some of his things. He's been so busy at work, poor dear. Mark has a key, and this isn't collecting, this is destroying." "Don't be dramatic, dear. I'm simply being thorough. We wouldn't want him to miss anything important." I surveyed the wreckage of my living room again. Like what? Old photos? Tax documents? My personal journals? A mother knows what her son needs. She descended the stairs, each step deliberate. "Though I must say, some of your writings are quite illuminating. Such anger, such ambition, not very becoming of a wife." My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Mom said she'd help pack some stuff. Hope that's okay." Of course he'd cover for her, he always did. "Get out," I said quietly. "Pardon?" "Get out." I stepped closer, paperweight still in hand. "And tell Mark if he wants anything else, he can come himself, during daylight hours, with advance notice." She clutched her designer handbag closer. "You've changed, Rose. Success has made you hard, cold. Mark noticed it too." "No, Evelyn. You and Mark made me this way. Now leave before I call security." She swept past me, pausing at the door. "You know, when Mark first brought you home, I told him you weren't right for our family. Too independent, too focused on your career. I should have trusted my instincts." The door clicked shut behind her, and I sank onto the couch, surrounded by the debris of my marriage. A torn photo caught my eye. Our wedding day. Mark and I laughing, his arm around my waist. Evelyn standing just behind us, her smile tight even then. My phone buzzed again. "Henry, my CEO. Emergency board meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Concerns about Q3 projections." I picked up a shredded page from my journal. The words "ambitious" and "career obsessed" jumped out at me, underlined in Evelyn's precise handwriting. 6 months of subtle sabotage, of Mark's growing distance, of Evelyn's increasing presence in our lives. It all crystallized in that moment. They wanted to break me? Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I didn't become head of finance at Pinnacle Trading by playing nice. I got there by being smarter, working harder, and yes, being more ambitious than everyone else. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and began gathering the scattered papers. Each document, every photo, would be carefully preserved. Evidence of their intrusion, their manipulation. They thought they knew what I was capable of. They had no idea. The boardroom felt colder than usual as I laid out the Q3 projections. Henry sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable, while 12 other executives studied their tablets. I knew something was wrong when I spotted Evelyn sitting in the corner, her presence as subtle as a knife in the dark. "These numbers don't align with our previous forecasts," Henry said, breaking the silence. "Care to explain the discrepancy, Rose?" I pulled up the next slide. Our initial projections were based on incomplete data. Someone altered the original reports. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Fortunately, I maintained backup copies of all documentation. Evelyn shifted in her seat. As head of the audit committee, she had no reason to attend this meeting. Unless I find it concerning, she interjected, that our head of finance would keep separate records without proper oversight. I find it more concerning that someone accessed secure files without authorization. I met her gaze. The system logs show multiple irregular access points over the past 3 months. The room tensed. Henry leaned forward. Are you suggesting? My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Mom says you're causing trouble again. When will you learn to play nice? I'm not suggesting anything, I continued, sliding a folder across the table. I'm stating facts. Someone has been systematically altering our financial records. Small changes, easily missed unless you're looking for them. The question is why? Evelyn's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the table. Perhaps we should discuss your recent emotional state, Rose. Divorce can be destabilizing. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Henry cleared his throat. Let's stay focused on the numbers. Of course, Evelyn smiled. Though I wonder if Rose's personal situation might be affecting her judgment. After all, she's been under considerable stress. My phone buzzed again. Claire this time. Emergency. Need to talk. It's about Mark. The numbers speak for themselves, I said, standing. I've provided comprehensive documentation of the discrepancies and their sources. I suggest we bring in an independent auditor to verify my findings. That won't be necessary, Evelyn cut in quickly. Too quickly. Henry raised an eyebrow. Actually, I think it's an excellent idea, Rose. Arrange it immediately. As the meeting dispersed, Evelyn caught my arm. You're playing a dangerous game, she whispered. Mark was right. You never did understand family loyalty. I pulled away. Funny, I thought loyalty went both ways. In the hallway, Vanessa waited with a stack of papers. Your ex-husband called 3 times during the meeting, she said, falling into step beside me. Also, I found something interesting in the old email archives. Show me. She handed me a printed email chain. Dates from 6 months ago, right when things started falling apart with Mark. Correspondence between Evelyn and several board members, discussing my concerning behavior and emotional instability. My phone buzzed again. Claire, please call. Found something in Mark's office you need to see. Cancel my afternoon, I told Vanessa, and get me everything you can find on Evelyn's communications with the board over the past year. Already on it, she hesitated. There's something else. Daniel Reed from Apex Solutions has been asking about you. Says he has information you might find interesting. I stopped walking. Daniel Reed, Mark's old college roommate, now working for our biggest competitor. The timing felt too convenient. Set up a meeting, I said finally. Somewhere public. Vanessa nodded and hurried off. I checked my phone again, this time opening Mark's message thread. His latest text made my blood run cold. Mom's right. You need help, Rose. Don't worry. We're taking care of everything. Taking care of everything. Just like they took care of our marriage, our trust, my personal space. But this time was different. This time, I saw the strings before they could pull them. My phone rang. Claire again. As I reached to answer it, I caught sight of my reflection in the office window. For a moment, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked harder, sharper, ready for war. Good, because that's exactly what this was becoming. I answered the phone. Claire, what did you find? Her voice shook. Rose, you need to get here now. It's worse than It's worse than we thought. Much worse. Claire's office felt like a tomb. She slid a manila folder across her desk, her hands trembling. I found these while organizing Mark's files. He asked me to digitize some old records, but these weren't supposed to be there. Inside were emails, dozens of them, between Evelyn and various board members, dating back 18 months, long before our marriage started crumbling, long before Mark began changing. There's more, Claire whispered. Check the last page. A draft of a letter to the SEC detailing concerns about my financial reporting. Allegations of fraud, manipulation of company records, all carefully crafted to look like I'd been cooking the books for personal gain. They're building a case against you, Claire said. Mark's been gathering evidence for months. Evelyn's orchestrating the whole thing. My coffee cup shattered against the wall before I realized I'd thrown it. That's why she was so quick to oppose an independent audit. Rose, Claire hesitated. Mia from accounting came to me yesterday. She said Mark's been asking her to backdate certain transactions. When she refused, Evelyn had her transferred to a different department. My phone buzzed. Daniel Reed. Heard about the board meeting. Let's talk. I might have information you need. They're not just trying to discredit me, I said, pieces clicking into place. They're setting me up to take the fall for their own fraud. Claire reached for my hand. There's something else. Mark's been seeing someone, a lawyer specializing in corporate crime. Professional or personal? Both. The laugh that escaped me didn't sound quite human. Of course. While I'd been fighting to save our marriage, they'd been orchestrating my destruction. My phone buzzed again. Vanessa, emergency. Evelyn's calling an impromptu audit committee meeting in 30 minutes. I have to go, I said, standing. Claire, make copies of everything. Keep them somewhere safe. What are you going to do? I paused at the door. What they taught me to do, follow the money. The elevator ride to the audit committee floor felt endless. Inside, I pulled up the secure server on my phone, accessing files I'd been gathering for months. Every suspicious transaction, every altered record, every irregular system access, all meticulously documented. The committee room was already full when I arrived. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, wearing the same expression she'd had at our wedding when I refused to take Mark's last name. Rose, she smiled. We were just discussing some concerning patterns in the Q3 reports. Funny, I replied, taking my seat. I was about to bring up some concerning patterns myself. Before we begin, Evelyn continued, I should mention that Mark has expressed worry about your recent behavior. He feels you might be under undue stress. Is that what he feels? I pulled out my tablet. Or is that what you told him to feel? The room temperature seemed to drop. Several committee members shifted uncomfortably. I have documentation, I continued, of systematic alterations to our financial records. Interesting how they all trace back to terminals accessed with your credentials, Evelyn. She didn't flinch. Careful, dear. Stress can make us see conspiracies where none exist. My phone buzzed. Mark, stop whatever you're doing. You're only making things worse for yourself. I'm calling for an immediate external audit, I announced, and I'm formally requesting that Evelyn recuse herself from the process, given her clear conflict of interest. You can't, she started. Actually, she can. Henry's voice came from the doorway. He stepped into the room, followed by two men in suits, and the SEC agrees. Rose has already provided them with extensive documentation. Evelyn's mask cracked just for a moment. In that instant, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. My phone buzzed one final time. Daniel, whatever they offered you, I can double it. Meet me tonight. I ignored it, watching Evelyn's perfectly manicured nails drum against the table. The sound reminded me of prison bars. Shall we begin? I asked, opening my files. I believe we have quite a lot to discuss. The cafe buzzed with morning traffic as I sat across from Daniel Reed, watching him stir his third sugar into his coffee. His perfectly pressed suit and practiced smile reminded me too much of Mark. You've stirred that enough to dissolve steel, I said. What do you really want? Direct as always, Rose. He leaned back. I heard about the SEC investigation. Nasty business. Is that why Apex Solutions suddenly wants to have coffee with me? His smile tightened. We both know Evelyn's going down. The question is, who's going with her? My phone vibrated. Vanessa. Emergency. Henry called emergency board meeting. Something about external auditors finding irregularities in your reports. Interesting timing, I said, studying Daniel's face. Almost like someone tipped them off about where to look. You always were clever. He slid a folder across the table. These might help. Records of transactions Evelyn authorized through offshore accounts, including ones in your name. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. What's your angle? Let's call it professional courtesy. For Mark's sake, another message buzzed. Claire, don't trust Daniel. Found connection between him and Evelyn. Call me now. You know what's funny? I stood up, leaving the folder untouched. Mark used to say you were the only honest friend he had. Daniel's smile vanished. Rose, save it. I already know about your monthly meetings with Evelyn. Did she promise you my position when this was over? His silence was answer enough. I grabbed my bag, but his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Think carefully, he said softly. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered. Take the deal I'm offering. I twisted free. Like Mark took your deal to spy on me? The cafe door chimed as I pushed through it. Outside, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Henry, texts from Mark, a voicemail from Evelyn. Vanessa met me at the office entrance, face pale. They're waiting in the boardroom, all of them. How bad? They have documentation showing you authorized the suspicious transfers, timestamps, security codes, everything. I stopped walking. That's impossible unless the realization hit like ice water. Unless someone had access to my personal codes. Someone like your husband. Mark stood at the end of the hallway, watching us. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married, uncertain, conflicted. Then Evelyn appeared behind him, and his expression hardened. The board's waiting, he said. Inside, Henry sat with two SEC investigators. Evelyn took her seat, like a queen ascending her throne. The evidence against me filled the screens behind them. Every transaction perfectly documented, every irregularity traced to my authorization codes. Rose, Henry began. These allegations are perfectly crafted, I cut in, almost like someone spent months planning them. Evelyn's smile didn't waver. The evidence speaks for itself. Does it? I pulled out my phone, clicking through files. Like the evidence that you and Daniel Reed have been meeting secretly for months? Or the evidence that Mark accessed my booth office the night before each suspicious transaction? The room temperature seemed to drop. Mark's face went pale. I have it all, I continued. Every meeting, every call, every altered record, including the ones you didn't know I could access. You're bluffing, Evelyn snapped. Am I? I turned to the SEC investigators. Check the metadata on those transactions. The authorization codes were used from an IP address registered to Mark's home office during hours when I was provably elsewhere. Mark stood abruptly. Mom, what did you make me do? Evelyn's mask cracked. Sit down, Mark. No, his voice shook. You said we were protecting the company, protecting our family. We were protecting you from her. The words echoed in the sudden silence. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and saw something break behind his eyes. My phone buzzed one final time. Claire, found the smoking gun. Coming up now. I smiled at Evelyn. You know what your mistake was? You thought you were the only one who could play the long game. The boardroom door opened, and Claire walked in carrying a very familiar laptop, Mark's personal computer, the one he never let anyone touch. The one that contained every email, every plan, every piece of evidence of their conspiracy. Shall we begin? I asked, watching Evelyn's perfect world start to crumble. The parking garage was empty except for Mia's car, exactly as planned. She sat behind the wheel, hands clutching a manila envelope, jumping when I tapped the window. Did anyone see you, Geiki and Misa? I asked as she handed over the envelope. No, but she glanced around nervously. Rose, there's something else, something not in those files. Before she could continue, headlights swept across us. A familiar black Mercedes pulled into view. Evelyn's car. Go, I urged Mia. Now. I ducked behind a concrete pillar as Mia's car squealed away. Evelyn's heels clicked against concrete, accompanied by another set of footsteps. The board meeting is tomorrow, Daniel's voice echoed. Everything's in place. And Rose? Still thinks I'm helping her. She's desperate enough to believe of almost anything now. I gripped the envelope tighter, my nails cutting into the paper. Good, Evelyn said. Once the vote goes through, the merger with Apex will proceed as planned. Rose won't know what hit her until it's too late. Their voices faded into the stairwell. I waited until the door clicked shut before pulling out my phone. Vanessa answered on the first ring. I've got something. Remember those offshore accounts? They're not just Evelyn's. Henry's name is on them too. My stomach dropped. Henry's involved? Deeper than that. The merger isn't just about removing you. They're planning to strip the company's assets before the deal goes through. You're just convenient cover for the real fraud. The elevator dinged. I pressed against the pillar as Mark stepped out, phone to his ear. "Mom, this isn't right," he was saying. "The SEC will what?" Evelyn's voice carried through his speaker. "Find out you helped orchestrate the whole thing? That those transactions under Rose's name came from your computer?" Mark's face crumpled. "You said nobody would get hurt. Nobody who matters will." I'd never heard such coldness in her voice. Mark ended the call, standing there looking lost until his phone buzzed with a text. His sharp intake of breath made me lean forward. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Rose, what did we do to you?" He hurried away, leaving me with the envelope and a decision. Inside were documents that could destroy Evelyn, but using them meant destroying Mark too, and possibly the entire company. My phone buzzed. "Claire, don't do anything yet. Found something in Henry's old emails. Meet me at the office. Urgent." Another text followed immediately. "Henry, need to discuss your future with the company. My office, 30 minutes. I opened the envelope, scanning the contents. Transaction records, emails, meeting minutes. Enough evidence to bring down Evelyn and Daniel's scheme. But something was missing. Something Mia had tried to tell me. The parking garage lights flickered, casting strange shadows. In that moment of darkness, I saw everything clearly. Every manipulation, every betrayal, every carefully orchestrated move in their game. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Parking level 3. 10 minutes. Truth about Henry's involvement. Come alone. I looked at the stairwell where Evelyn and Daniel had disappeared, then at the spot where Mark had stood, broken by his own choices. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, weighted with consequences I couldn't fully predict. Claire called. "Rose, don't trust Henry. The meeting's a trap." The call cut off abruptly. I tried calling back, straight to voicemail. Another text. "Vanessa, something's wrong. Claire's computer's been accessed. Files missing. Security's heading up." The elevator dinged again. This time, Mia burst out breathless. "Rose, the thing I couldn't tell you. Henry's not just involved. He's the one who started it all. Before Mark, before Evelyn. He's been planning this for years, Becky." Footsteps echoed from multiple directions. Time was running out. I had 3 choices: meet the mysterious source, go to Henry's office, or find Claire. Each path led to answers, but also to potential traps. The evidence in my hands could destroy careers, lives, an entire company. But without knowing the full truth, I might take down the wrong people. Or worse, the wrong person might take me down first. The footsteps grew closer. I had to decide. Now. The company retreat's welcome dinner buzzed with forced laughter and clinking glasses. I sat at my assigned table, watching Henry work the room, while Evelyn held court near the bar. Everything looked normal. Perfect. Exactly as they wanted it to appear. My phone vibrated. Claire still wasn't answering. Vanessa's last message haunted me. Security found Claire's office empty. Signs of struggle. Police involved. "You look tense." Daniel slid into the seat beside me. "Too close. Worried about tomorrow's presentation?" I smiled, all teeth. "Just wondering who else knows about your offshore accounts with Henry." His hand tightened around his wine glass. "Careful, Rose. Some doors are better left closed. Like the door to the server room where you and Evelyn copied my security credentials." Before he could respond, Mark appeared at our table. "Rose, we need to talk." "Actually," I stood up, "I need to make my presentation." The room quieted as I approached the podium. Henry nodded encouragingly, while Evelyn's smile never reached her eyes. I connected my laptop to the projector, hands steady despite everything. "Before we discuss Q4 projections," I began, "I'd like to address some concerning patterns in our recent transactions." The first slide appeared, a web of connections linking Henry, Evelyn, and Daniel to the offshore accounts. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rose, Henry warned, this isn't the appropriate forum. It's exactly the forum, I continued, clicking to the next slide. Especially since 3 board members are implicated in. The screen went black, then my laptop, then the entire room plunged into darkness. When the emergency lights flickered on, Evelyn stood by the electrical panel, looking triumphant. Technical difficulties, she announced. Perhaps we should discuss why Claire Mitchell disappeared after discovering your real plans. I cut in. The room fell silent. Mark's face went pale. What did you do? He whispered, turning to his mother. Evelyn's mask slipped for just a moment. What was necessary? Like falsifying evidence against me? I pulled out my phone, playing the recording of her garage conversation with Daniel, or planning to strip the company's assets before the merger. Security guards appeared at the doors. Henry nodded to them. Rose Anderson, one approached me. You need to come with us. For what? I challenged. For corporate espionage, Henry said smoothly. We have evidence you've been selling company secrets to Apex Solutions. The room erupted in whispers. I looked around, at faces I'd known for years, watching them turn away one by one. Show them, I told Vanessa, who stood by the laptop. Nothing happened. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Rose. They have Claire. My stomach dropped as 2 guards grabbed my arms. Through the crowd, I caught glimpses. Daniel's satisfied smirk, Henry's practiced concern, Evelyn's victory. But it was Mark's expression that cut deepest, not triumph or anger, but fear. He knew everything, and he was too much of a coward to stop it. The evidence is in my office, I said loudly. In the safe that was empty when security checked an hour ago, Henry asked, along with your mysteriously wiped computer? They'd thought of everything, every angle, every escape route, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. While I'd been playing chess, they'd changed the entire game. As security led me out, my phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number, storage unit 247. Proof of everything. Get it before they do. Claire. But they were already taking my phone, my laptop, my access badge, everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, dismantled in minutes. The last thing I saw was Evelyn placing a comforting hand on Mark's shoulder, her voice carrying across the room. I told you she'd become dangerous. It's better this way. Better for whom? I wanted to scream. But I kept quiet, watching my carefully constructed revenge crumble around me. They hadn't just outplayed me. They'd used my own plans against me, turned my allies, and now held Claire's life as collateral. In the security office, as they processed my termination, I realized my fatal mistake. I'd been so focused on exposing their betrayal that I'd never considered they might actually win. The question now wasn't how to get revenge. It was how to survive. Storage Unit 247 loomed before me in the pre-dawn darkness. The bolt cutters felt heavy in my hands. One last line to cross. Behind me, Mia kept watch, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. Someone's coming, she whispered. Footsteps echoed through the concrete corridor. I recognized the rhythm of expensive heels before I saw her. I wondered who helped Claire set this up, Evelyn said, emerging from the shadows. Hello, Rose. Where is she? Safe, for now. She glanced at the bolt cutters. Breaking and entering? How far you've fallen. Not as far as you. I stepped forward. Where's your puppet Daniel? Or did Henry decide he wasn't useful anymore? A flicker of something crossed her face. Daniel had an unfortunate accident. Poor judgment on his part. More footsteps. Mark appeared behind his mother, looking haunted. It's done, he said. The transfer's complete. What transfer? I demanded. The company assets, Mia spoke up. They're moving everything offshore tonight. Once it's done, Evelyn cut in. Pinnacle Trading will be worthless. The merger will fail. And you, Rose, will take the blame. That's why you needed my credentials, I realized. My authorization codes. Among other things, she smiled. Though I must admit, you made it easier than expected. So focused on revenge, you never saw the bigger picture. Mom, Mark stepped forward. This isn't quiet. Her voice cracked like a whip. Remember what's at stake, but I'd seen it. That moment of rebellion in Mark's eyes. The same look he'd had in the parking garage. He knows, I said quietly. About Claire. About everything. I know you killed Daniel, Mark said. When he threatened to expose the real plan, Evelyn's mask slipped. I protected our family. No, his voice strengthened. You destroyed it. And now, a gunshot cracked through the air. Mark stumbled backward, red blooming across his chest. Evelyn stood with a small pistol raised, her hand perfectly steady. I did everything for you, she said as he collapsed. Everything. I lunged for the storage unit door while Mia ran for help. The lock snapped under the bolt cutters just as another shot rang out. Inside, a laptop glowed in the darkness. Claire's backup drive, containing everything. The real financial records, evidence of Henry's fraud, proof of Daniel's murder. It was never about you, Evelyn said behind me. You were just convenient, the perfect scapegoat. Like Mark was the perfect son. I turned to face her. The perfect puppet? He was weak, like his father. She stepped into the unit. But you were strong. That's why you had to be destroyed. You're right, I smiled. I am strong, and the storage unit door slammed shut behind her. In the dim laptop light, I saw confusion replace confidence. What? Live streaming, I said, pointing to the laptop's camera. To the SEC, FBI, and Board of Directors. Say hello to your audience, Evelyn. Her gun hand trembled. You're lying. Like you lied about Daniel's accident or Claire's disappearance. I stepped closer. Or how about the offshore accounts you set up in Henry's name without his knowledge? How did you? Because I am exactly what you made me. Another step. Ruthless. Calculating. Willing to sacrifice everything for revenge. The gun clattered to the floor as sirens wailed in the distance. Evelyn backed against the wall, her perfect facade crumbling. He'll never forgive you, she whispered. Mark's alive, I said. Bulletproof vest. His idea, actually. Turns out he learned something from you after all. Never trust anyone completely. The storage unit door opened. FBI agents poured in. As Evelyn sank to her knees, her empire collapsing around her. Outside, Mark sat in an ambulance, bruised but breathing. Claire stood beside him, finally free from her forced disappearance. They'd both played their parts perfectly, helping me set the final trap. But as I watched Evelyn being led away in handcuffs, her head still held high, I felt no triumph, only emptiness. We'd all lost something in this game of revenge, some more than others. My phone buzzed one last time. Henry, well played, but remember, you've become one of us now. I deleted the message without responding. He wasn't wrong. The corner office still smelled of Evelyn's perfume. I stood at the window, watching workers remove the Pinnacle Trading sign from the building across the street. My reflection stared back, sharper, harder, barely recognizable from the woman who'd started this journey. The door opened. Claire entered, carrying a box of her things. The SEC finished their final interviews. Henry's taking a plea deal. And Evelyn, still maintaining her innocence. Mark's testimony might change that. I nodded, turning back to the window. The silence between us felt different now, heavy with unspoken words. I'm leaving, Claire said finally. Got an offer in Chicago. I know, Vanessa told me. Of course she did. Claire set her box down. You know, when you first told me your plan for revenge, I thought I was helping a friend. I didn't realize I was watching you become Evelyn. The words hit like a physical blow. I'm nothing like her. No? She moved beside me. Look at your office, your position, the way people fear you now. You won, Rose, but at what cost? My phone buzzed. Mark, Mom's asking to see you one last time. You should go, Claire said, reading the message over my shoulder. For closure, if nothing else. There's nothing left to say, isn't there? She headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. You know what the difference is between revenge and justice. Justice leaves room for redemption. The detention center's visiting room felt smaller than I remembered. Evelyn sat straight-backed in her orange jumpsuit, somehow still managing to look regal. I expected you sooner, she said. I've been busy, cleaning up your mess. Our mess, she smiled thinly. We're more alike than you think. That's what everyone keeps saying. Because it's true. She leaned forward. You wanted revenge. I wanted control. We both destroyed everything in our path to get it. The difference is, I won. Did you? Her eyes swept over me. Look at yourself, Rose, alone, feared, respected, but never loved, just like me. I stood to leave, but her next words froze me in place. Mark still loves you, you know, even after everything. Mark loves whoever has the most power over him. Perhaps, she sat back, or perhaps he sees in you what I saw, a reflection of his own weakness, transformed into strength. Outside, Mark waited by my car. Of course he did. Mom's right, he said, about us being alike. Your mother's in prison for fraud and attempted murder. And you're free because you were better at the game. He stepped closer. We could start over, together, stronger now that we understand. Stop, I held up a hand. Just stop. His face fell. Rose, we can't go back, and I don't want to go forward as this. I gestured between us. Whatever this is. Then what do you want? The question echoed in my head as I drove home. What did I want? Revenge had consumed me for so long, I'd forgotten how to want anything else. My apartment felt empty, the silence deafening. On my desk sat the last photo of Mark and me, taken before everything fell apart. Behind it, a newer photo, Claire and me at her engagement party, before I dragged her into my vendetta. My phone buzzed. Vanessa, board meeting tomorrow. They're voting on the new CEO position. You're the front runner. I stared at the message, then at my reflection in the window. Claire was right. I had become something else. Something harder, colder, more calculated. But maybe that wasn't the end of the story. I picked up my phone, scrolling to Claire's number. The line rang 3 times before she answered. That job in Chicago, I said. Do they need a financial consultant? A pause, then softly, are you sure? I looked around my perfect empty apartment, at all the trappings of my victory. I think it's time to learn the difference between revenge and redemption. It won't be easy, she warned. Nothing worth doing ever is. Outside, the city lights flickered like stars, each one a reminder of choices made and paths not taken. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices. But for the first time since this all began, I felt something other than the burning need for revenge. I felt free.